Hello and welcome to the Skyline View Sports Show. I'm your host, Jasper Lindsay. Today I'm joined by Marco Milani, Steven Risotto, Armand Archunani, and Alvin Chang. So today we're going to talk hockey. We're going to kick that out to Marco right away.
Well, so as y'all probably know, the Sharks' two games against the Vegas Golden Knights were postponed because a member of the Vegas Golden Knights organization tested positive for COVID-19. So unfortunate. So the next game will be Friday. They have an unsolicited week off, so that could be nice for some injuries if any came up. But the news coming to Friday is supposedly after the mix-up in the last game against the Colorado Avalanche, which they lost 3-0, Sasha Chmelevski will be making his NHL debut, possibly skating on the fourth line. I said last week that he was supposed to make his NHL debut, but there was a roster error, which they didn't get the transaction out in time. So Marcus Sorensen replaced him on that fourth line. He's all set, though, to make his debut. They should be promoting him from the taxi squad sometime this week, today to possibly Thursday. And I'm excited to see what the Huntington Beach native can do. For the San Jose Barracuda, they're still stuck in Vegas. Well, actually, I believe that's updated, but there has not been any positive tests since Friday. Friday night, during the second period preseason game against the Henderson Silver Knights, it was found that a San Jose Barracuda player tested positive, and they suspended not only that game the rest of the way, but they suspended the rest of the preseason. So COVID ravaging hockey, it's not fun. But I'm excited to see what the Sharks can do with these next few games, and hopefully we can get some improvements.
Yeah, COVID's ravaging a bunch of sports right now, and we're likely going to see a delay to the MLB season as well. Speaking of baseball, we have some huge news. We have Nolan Arenado, the star of the Colorado Rockies, headed to St. Louis in a 5-player trade. And we're going to kick it over to our MLB analyst, Steven, for his initial take.
So I'm going to start this off. I can't blame the Rockies for trading Arenado, however you pronounce it. I think it's Arenado. I can't blame them for trading him, because if I were in their situation, I would do the same thing. I would trade Arenado, I would trade Story, I would trade Blackman. I would clean house. However, I can blame the Colorado Rockies for getting themselves in this position. Okay, so I have a tweet here from Patrick Saunders, who is Rockies beat writer for Denver Post. And he says, quote, "Why does Nolan Arenado want out?" This from Sports Illustrated's Tom Verducci. "Since Arenado made his first All-Star team in 2015, the Rockies have spent $281.6 million on 12 free agents. Virtually all of their decisions have been disasters. And here are some of them. Jason Mott, $10 million. Mike Dunn, $19 million. Daniel Murphy, $24 million. Jake McGee, 27. Brian Shaw, 27. Gerardo Parra gets a little bump at 27.5. Wade Davis at 52 million. And then the big one, of course, is Ian Desmond at 70 million. The Rockies did this to themselves. You know, I wouldn't say deserved a low return. It is the most complicated deal we've seen in a while, with deferred money going over, an extra year added onto Arenado's deal. It's interesting, and the Rockies only have themselves to blame. And I should say the Cardinals side of it too. They're getting a big boost. Obviously, they have one of the best corner infield combos with Goldschmidt and Arenado. So they're getting a boost. They're good to go. Rockies need to clean it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And as our local Rockies fan, I have just no respect for this franchise anymore. I mean, I've been a fan since the Troy Tulowitzki days. And this franchise, it's built on just always being just good enough. Just good enough to make the playoffs, just good enough to win a wild card game. But they're never over the top. And like when you go out and you try and spend money to keep a player of Arenado's caliber, and then you just refuse to surround them with anyone who can make an impact, it's ridiculous. I mean, we spend all this money on bats and we never spend pitching. And at Coors Field, you need pitching to win. You need guys who can get the ground ball and keep it out of the air. Because once you get in the air, that ball is just going to carry forever. And I mean, just looking at what the Rockies received back, it's kind of like they could have traded him to any team and gotten this haul. I mean, Austin Gomber, we'll see how he is. He's probably has the highest upside of any of these guys. But again, he's a lefty, and I think he's probably going to struggle at Coors Field. The rest of these guys, they were all recently drafted after the first round, third round, fifth round. Jake Sommers is a guy who you might want to keep your eye on. I remember playing with him in MLB The Show, and he had a high upside. So based off video games, he could be a good piece. But yeah, I mean, just as a Rockies fan, just you got to think about the message you're sending to your fans. I mean, even from the beginning, when we gave Arenado this contract, we were the ones who gave him that opt-out clause. We were the ones who said, hey, if you don't like what we are doing, you can leave. And I mean, just like, what kind of a message does that send to your star player, right? Like, you want this guy to be here for the long term, but you're giving him outs and you're giving him uncertainty with his contract. Building on that, yeah, like giving mid-level players huge money is just ridiculous to me. Like Ian Desmond, even when he was with the Nationals in Texas, I never saw something out of this guy that warranted a $70 million contract. Wade Davis, I completely understand that one. I will defend that one all day. This guy fell off, but he was great for that first year of the deal, and he's coming off a Cubs World Series. And I mean, yeah, you got to take risks, and I think the Rockies take the wrong risk way too often. And as a franchise, you got to see where you're going to go from here. Trevor Story's already voiced his frustration with the organization, and they say they're not rebuilding, but it looks like we're headed that way. Now switching gears to the NFL, we have Super Bowl this Sunday. Everyone's excited. We got the Bucs with Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes, the GOAT versus the rising GOAT. We're going to kick it out to Armand first. What do you see in this game?
I see a lot of what we saw in week 12. You know, we saw Tyreek Hill having that abysmal game. Then, you know, Tampa Bay started to pick it up a little bit. It was a little bit too little too late. But Tampa Bay, their defense stepped up in the postseason. Week 12, they looked like they were just getting shredded left and right with Tyreek and his speed. I think that's going to be the X factor in this game, the Murphy Bunting and Tyreek Hill matchup. And then Devin White, he's going to have to step up against Kelsey. I think that matchup is huge too, because we all know what Brady's going to give us in the Super Bowl, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Brady's a professional guy. He's going to go out there and he's going to handle business. I think this game really comes down to what kind of a start Tampa Bay gets off to. If Brady can come out and just start slinging it down the field, I think they have a fighting chance. But obviously, like, if you give the Chiefs – if you have to punt in the first or second quarter, the Chiefs are just going to pile it on, and they're going to run the ball down your throat, and they're just going to play tough physical football. Marco, what do you see in this game?
So I happened to catch Sports Center with SVP late last night and Mina Kimes was on,
Great
and she was
journalist.
talking to what?
Mina Kimes is one of my favorite journalists.
I agree. So she was talking about the Bucs defense trying to show up, and Armand was mentioning Devin White, but she was mostly talking about the 4-man rush and how they're using a lot of the 4-man rush with Jason Pierre-Paul, and obviously we saw against the Packers that pass rush really was the focal point of the Bucs team. Forget what Tom Brady's contributions. That was the focal point just with Jason Pierre-Paul alone. So the Bucs' key to winning that game is that defense showing up, as well as Tom Brady getting it out to his receivers in time. Antonio Brown did have a good game, but Scotty Miller should be used. He was a dark horse this season, and he's been a very good receiver. I am really excited for this game.
Yeah, and I mean, Scotty Miller might get a little extra push in that game because of his comments on Tyreek Hill this week, saying he thought he was faster. So we'll definitely see how that works. But the Bucs do get Antonio Brown back. They didn't have him against the Packers, and that's going to be huge for them. Also, Rob Gronkowski, that's a guy who's always just going to be a red zone threat. But I think you're definitely right in talking about their pass rush. This is a team that's pass rush can make up for their lackings in the secondary. If they can pressure the quarterback, Carlton Davis, who's actually a really good corner, but Murphy Bunting especially, they can make plays. But in other NFL news this week, we had a huge trade. We had Matthew Stafford getting sent to the Rams for 2 first-round picks, a third-round, and Jared Goff. Armand, what are your thoughts on this trade?
When I first saw this trade come up, I was like, I didn't see a fighting chance for the Rams to try and go after him. I thought even after that article that came out about McVay and Goff being butting heads together in the playoffs and stuff like that, I didn't really see that type of trade going through because they just signed Goff to an extension. They owe him money. It's really tough to see, but I think the Rams might have overpaid for him, I think, to be honest. Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback, but I think that was a little bit too overpaid. They did the same with Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters a couple years back, and now they're both gone. So we'll see how this ends up, but I think they'll be a top 2 team in the NFC West.
Absolutely. And I honestly don't think they overpaid. I think Stafford is this guy. He's on paper, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's just been in Detroit for far too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you surround him with guys like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and then you're even going to see Tyler Higbee, I think, get involved a lot because he loved TJ Hawkinson back in Detroit. But if you're Detroit, you're getting a guy who's going to help you actually be able to compete in that NFC Central Conference. And I mean, the haul you got, I like Dan Campbell as a coach. I am on the Dan Campbell hype train. I think he's great for not only the football team, but the city of Detroit. That's a tough-nosed guy who plays blue-collar football, and he wants to win for the city. But I think now that the Rams have gone out and got Matthew Stafford, it puts a lot of pressure on the Niners now to make a quarterback switch because, I mean, you look at this division, you got Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and now Matthew Stafford. It looks like Jimmy Garoppolo is the odd man out. Marco, what are your thoughts on the Niners QB options this offseason?
There are a lot to choose from. I have a lot of takes on who they should get. They probably should have been. I agree that there was a big overpay. I think it was a big mistake for the Niners to kind of distance themselves from Stafford because that would have been a great QB for the organization. And if they drafted like a QB in the 2nd or 3rd round of the draft to like develop with Stafford, that would be a great piece. But I think there's a lot of rumors with Deshaun Watson going out, and there was an analyst, a Texans analyst, that made a mock. What would you call it? A mock trade where he said like what they could possibly acquire with that trade or how they can get Watson. Excuse me. This is John McClain on Twitter, and he says that they'll want 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 young defensive starters. The Niners have that. They can trade the number 12 pick, and they can probably trade number 43. And they can probably trade back in or trade with somebody for a 3rd later like before the draft. So with that said, those picks, Azeez Al-Shaair and either Emmanuel Mosley or somebody on that young core, maybe they can convince him to take Eric Armstead, but that's going to take a lot of fleecing in order to do that. So in conclusion, it would be Watson to the 49ers for a first and a 2nd in 2021 and a 1st and a 2nd in 2022, as well as Al-Shaair and another young defensive starter, either a DB or Eric Armstead.
Absolutely. And I think with the Niners, I don't know if they're willing to trade their young defensive core because their Super Bowl run was predicated on defense. But I think it definitely would be interesting to see if they start investing a little more in their offense because obviously their defense could make up for Jimmy G's lackings. If he ever turned over the ball, they'd go out there, they'd get a stop, 3 and out, and they'd get the ball right back in his hands. But with a guy like Deshaun Watson, he can get the ball in his hand and he can go on those Mahomes-like runs where it's touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. So it'll be definitely interesting to see if the Niners make a push. I think they like to keep Jimmy G, but I'm not really sure.
And that's why I said Al-Shaair, because you were talking about the young defensive prospects. And there was one, I can't remember where I read it, but there was somebody that was saying trade Dre Greenlaw. instead of Al-Shaair. And I think Al-Shaair is somebody that they can afford to lose because they have Greenlaw and they have Warner and they can pick up a linebacker in this year's draft. It's pretty loaded in the linebacker position. So, yeah.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens. We're welcoming back Alvin Chang to the TSV podcast today, and he's going to talk some basketball with us. Alvin, what are your takes?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the Warriors. So Warriors currently ranked 7 in Western Conference. Well, honestly, that makes me really surprised because, before the season, I don't really think, the Warriors can compete in Western Conference. However, I think everyone is really surprised with, for example, like a bench player like Ken Bazemore or even Pascal. So I think those players are kind of like an X factor that the Warriors can, play not bad right now. And also Steph Curry, I think he's definitely deserved the MVP candidate in this season. 27 points, 5 rebound, and 6 assist average so far. So also I think that Oubre and Wiggins is better than the last season, especially Oubre. Like you can see in offensively, you can shoot the three, and also in a transition fast break, you can just grab the ball and dunk. However, for Wiggins, I think no matter in defensively or offensively, I think Andrew Wiggins, especially in defensively, you can help the center like Wiseman or even Draymond Green to protect the rim. But unfortunately, James Wiseman had an injury and need to take 7 to 10 days. So I think in the next game, like today against the Celtics, and Thursday and Saturday against the Mavericks, I think Draymond Green and Pascal, those players, like they should help to protect the rim. Otherwise, on rebound, and they're going to lose a lot of rebounds. So far, so good for the Warriors.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I've seen out of Oubre is just how tenacious he is on defense. This is what I love the most about Steve Kerr teams is just the way they focus on defense and they can hold teams to 90 points. It just puts them in better positions to win, especially on nights when they're going to lack that offense. Like, for example, when Oubre was struggling, they'd win games because they'd get back on defense. And I think that's what Oubre gives you. He gives you an edge. And I mean, I really like the Warriors' second unit right now. I think Pascal coming off the bench, and even when you saw them move Wiseman to the bench, that second unit, it is explosive. It will punch you in the mouth, and it plays hard basketball. So
also,
I think
also Damian Lee is clutch.
Absolutely. And I think that Warriors team, if they get into if they sneak into the playoffs, I think they could maybe have a little We Believe reunion and knock off a top seed. I don't know how far they can run, but I mean, it's definitely fun to see.
Currently looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, switching over to a classic TSV segment, we are bringing back 60-second rants. So first up, we're going to have Steven.
Okay, so I could pretty much go on a rant about your hair, but I'm gonna avoid that and I'm gonna choose something else here. First of all, the groundhog did not see his shadow, or he did. I think
he did. Let me double check. We got more winter.
He did. So we get more winter. That means 6 more months of winter. That's number one. Number two, if you guys haven't already, check out the Drew Robinson story, which is on ESPN Plus, ESPN.com. Jeff Passan wrote an incredible article about it. It takes about a half an hour to read, but Drew Robinson, an incredible story, currently in the Giants minor league system, battled with depression, and you'll read about it in the article. Number two, or number three, this is a big one here. NCAA football is back. Woo! The video game is back, ladies and gentlemen. This is amazing. EA Sports is reviving it. It stopped, I believe, it's taken a hiatus since 2014 or 15, but it's back. And I think that is the best news of the day. So that's my 60-second rant. I'm going to go on for about 5 more seconds and kind of waste time here talking, and I'm done. That was pretty good.
Great stuff, Steve. All right. Alvin, let's get it. Go.
Well, I'm going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. So far, it's really unacceptable. They have James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. Okay, I know they're really good offensively, but defensively, oh my God, they are horrible. So they're ranked. The average point loss is ranked 27. So which is I think is terrible. So when James Harden's coming, I don't think they can play. The chemistry for the Nets. So in this situation, I think Steve Nash have to figure it out on defensively. For example, like yesterday, they almost win the Wizards. Like you let Bradley Beal and Westbrook and hit the 2 consecutive 3-pointer. Like that's not good. So I think Steve Nash have to figure it out.
Absolutely. I mean, that also brings up questions. Is Steve Nash head coach material, or is he just another Jason Kidd? All right, swinging it over to Armand. You have 60 seconds on the clock. Go.
All right, so let's talk about what the Niners have to do in the offseason. I think the Niners have to, number one, re-sign Trent Williams. You need that left tackle. He played really good season this year, so I think that's the first step. So re-sign Jason Verrett. He was probably the one light in the tunnel, and I think that's definitely the number 2 priority, especially with Sherman going out. I think he's out of the system. If you want to go for Watson, go for Watson. Get those 2 first-round picks, 2 third-rounders. Give up Armstead. I think he's the guy in the Super Bowl run where he was the one where he was feeding off of everyone else, and I think Kerry Hyder can do that. I think he can possibly do that for Eric Armstead. You also have Solomon Thomas coming off a torn ACL, so I think that's probably the best couple moves that the Niners have to do to stay in the NFC West, get out of there with the division champs.
All right. Marco, you ready?
Yep.
Let's get it.
So for my 60, there was some racing going on this weekend, the 24 Hours of Daytona. And making his debut after retiring from NASCAR was Jimmy Johnson in the Chip Ganassi DPI machine. He finished second in this class and second overall. Congratulations to that team. For it was, of course, the dominant Wayne Taylor Racing DPI winning it with IndyCar drivers Alexander Rossi and Elio Castroneves headlining. But they finished second with endurance racing legend Kamui Kobayashi, IndyCar, Indianapolis 500 champion Sabin Pagenaud, and then, of course, Jimmy Johnson. Some other notable names. Austin Dillon actually was racing in the LMP2 division with Rick Ware Racing. So good stuff in the 24 Hours of Daytona.
Great stuff. All right. I'm going to finish this off. I'm going to talk about how much I hate Matt LaFleur. This guy, man. 2 straight NFC championships and cannot get it done. He had all the team he needed this year, man. He had an MVP Aaron Rodgers. He had Devontae Adams, who quietly caught 18 touchdowns. He had an above-average defense, and he takes the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. What are you thinking? I think LaFleur, a.k.a. LaFraud, needs to go. I don't think he's the guy in Green Bay. I think he rides the coattails of an MVP quarterback. I think he doesn't even like Aaron Rodgers, and he sent that message by drafting Jordan Love. And I just don't know, as a Packers fan, where you go from here. Because you want to trust the guy. He's gotten you to 2 straight NFC championships, but I just don't think you can. I don't think he has what it takes. So that's my 60-second rant, and that'll do it for me. All right. As always, thank you for joining us today. Got some new hair, an original face, and we'll be back next week.